class assignment from August 14th, 2024. Not your assignment, my assignment. For the next week, do something caring every day in the direction of someone with whom you have a conflicted or challenging relationship. This homework was given to me as part of a Jewish ethics course I took with Rabbi David Jaffe this past summer. Each session focused on developing a particular inner quality, and we had now reached rachamim, compassion. The homework sounded absurd to me at first. Identify someone in our life with whom we have a difficult relationship, someone with whom we don't see eye to eye, someone who lets us down, angers us, or hurts us, and commit to doing something kind for them every day. I felt an inner pull that said, I don't want to. And though Rabbi Jaffe never used the word forgiveness, I wondered how I could actively choose to bestow loving kindness on someone who I most certainly was not ready to forgive. As I looked at the faces of my classmates in their Zoom boxes, I could see that I wasn't the only one who had reservations. It sounded uncomfortable at best and painful at worst. Why, for the love of God, would anyone take this assignment on? Maybe it's exactly for the love of God that we would take this on, and more specifically for a God of love. Because Judaism's God is a God of love. If this theology sounds foreign to you, you're not alone. American Jews have sought to de-emphasize the place of God's love in Judaism in order to separate themselves from the Christian world around them, which amplifies messages of God's love. More than that, centuries of Christian hegemony elevated a false idea that Judaism's God is a God of judgment and vengeance. And especially during the High Holy Days, the only time that many Jews encountered Jewish prayer and theology, it's easy to see God that way. As a child, I was terrified of the God I encountered on Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur. During the closing service of Yom Kippur, I trembled in my seat, racking my brain to remember any apologies I might have forgotten to make to God. Allow me to bring this to life for you. The organ played, bum, 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 bum. Maybe you want to do that. Bum, 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 bum. And the choir sang, God, we stand in awe before your deeds. While the rabbi shouted, Rabbi Mark, as the gates begin to close. This was not... You should. You totally should. Yeah. This was not a God of compassion and grace. This is a God who decides who will be written in the book of life for another year, a God who is judging us, measuring the quality of our repentance and atonement, a God of retribution, a God whose love is conditional. Luckily, that's not the only understanding of God that our tradition offers us. In his new book on Judaism in Love, Rabbi Schmelkin teaches that human existence itself is proof of God's love, that God created us to love us and to be loved by us. We find a beautiful example of God's love in the writings of the 8th century prophet Hosea. God says, I fell in love with Israel when he was a child, and I have called him my son ever since Egypt. God loved the people of Israel even before they had done anything to deserve that love. In the verses that follow, God recalls the stubbornness and betrayal of the Israelites, even saying, they have ignored my healing care. Can you hear the sadness in these words? Do you know the pain of being taken for granted by someone you love? Through the eyes of Hosea, our God is a God who feels hurt and shunned. This is a God we can know and understand. This is a God who struggles just like us. In Hosea, God's pain takes on a dimension of anger, but only temporarily. Yes, in God's anger, God fantasizes about destroying the Israelites. But, and this is crucially important to understanding this story, this only lasts a short while before God pulls God's self together, proclaiming, "How can I give you up? All my tenderness is stirred. I will not act upon my wrath. I will not come in fury." God feels furious, but chooses not to act on the emotion. God does not want to lose a precious relationship. God's relationship with us, with you and me. God considers God's relationship with you to be too precious to lose. Just a moment ago, we sang, and maybe you want to join me. This is not a sermon where you sit back and do nothing. Avinu Malkeinu, Chonenu Vanenu. Avinu Malkeinu, Chonenu Vanenu, Ki ein banu masi. Our parent, our ruler, have mercy on us and answer us, for our deeds are insufficient. Deal with us charitably and lovingly and redeem us. What do we ask for when we sing this haunting melody? Though our machzor doesn't translate the word Avinu, the prayer calls God our Father, our parent. We ask God to love us the way that a parent loves a child. I know this kind of love because I feel it for my own children. My blood boils when my daughter screams in my face, or when my son wakes me up at 4 a.m. simply to say, "Ima, I'm bored." It's really fun, let me tell you. But despite my anger and frustration, my love doesn't waver. Over the past year, we have missed the mark in big and small ways. We come to God as a child, asking for God to love us despite our failings. We appeal to the image of God we see in the book of Hosea, saying, "Even if I don't deserve your compassion, please give it to me anyway." Just a little while ago in our service, we chanted the 13 attributes of God. Let's sing it together if you know it. Adonai, Adonai, El Rachum V'Chanun, Erech Alpayim, V'Rav Chesed V'Emet. Adonai, Adonai, a God compassionate and gracious, slow to anger, abounding in kindness and faithfulness, extending kindness to the 1,000th generation, forgiving iniquity, transgression, and sin, and granting pardon. Why do we recite these words on Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur? To remind God to behave this way, and to remind ourselves that as people who were made in God's image, we too have the power to exercise compassion. We call on God to extend God's great, never-ending compassion. But are we actually willing to follow suit in our own relationships? For many of us, it's all too easy to say that a person who has wronged us or caused us pain no longer deserves our kindness, to distance ourselves from these people, or even label them as toxic and completely walk away. A New York Times article from July reported on a growing social media trend in which some online therapists encourage their clients to completely cut ties with family members. When I asked a couple of therapists I know about this trend, including my own father-in-law, I learned that most clinicians view family cutoffs as a last resort reserved only for the most extreme circumstances. Yet, one of the online therapists who has gone viral provides a multiple choice toxic family test that takes 5 minutes to fill out. I'm serious, I took it. Don't worry, Mom. You're not toxic. And provides recommendations that in some cases include estrangement. Our God of love calls on us to try to remain open-hearted even towards difficult people in our lives. I want to be very clear, very, very clear that I don't mean to say we should never set boundaries. Sometimes our own well-being depends on it. I am also not talking about open-heartedness towards someone physically or emotionally abusive. I am talking about a much grayer area. The people in our lives who irritate us, who have slighted us, who have hurt us, taken advantage of us, disappointed us sometimes over and over again. Perhaps at times these relationships become so strained that we fantasize about shutting the person out entirely. Who comes to mind for you? Maybe it's a parent who's critical about every part of you they don't see in themselves. Maybe it's your colleague at work who does the bare minimum, causing more work to fall on your already overly full plate. Maybe it's your brother who has moved so far to one side of the Israeli-Palestinian conflict that you feel like you no longer have common ground to stand on. Maybe it's your cousin who plans to vote this November for the candidate whose political stances disturb and terrify you. Maybe it's your friend who always calls you with a problem but never asks how you're doing. What should we do when we find ourselves in these kinds of relationships? I want to share a story from a first century Midrashic tale written by our ancient rabbis of 2,000 years ago. Long ago, in the days of Rabbi Tanhuma, the people of Israel experienced a terrible drought. They came to Rabbi Tanhuma and exclaimed, "Rabbi, decree a fast." The people believed fasting might serve as adequate repentance. But after 3 days of fasting, the drought did not subside. Rabbi Tanhuma entered the synagogue with a new idea. "My children, fill yourselves with mercy for one another, and the Holy One, blessed be God, will become filled with mercy for you." And so the people of Israel went out into the streets to distribute charity to the poor. As they performed their task, they noticed one of their fellows giving money to his former wife and not to the needy beggars. These men snitched to Rabbi Tanhuma immediately. "Rabbi Tanhuma, we have a sinner among us. We saw one man giving money to his ex-wife." Surprised to hear this, Rabbi Tanhuma decided to speak to the man. "Who is this woman to you? Why were you giving her money?" The man replied, "Rabbi, she's my ex-wife. I saw that she was in distress, and I became filled with compassion for her." Rabbi Tanhuma lifted his face toward heaven and cried out, "Master of the universe, if this man who no longer has an obligation to his ex-wife was filled with such great compassion, then please remember that you are a gracious and merciful God and have mercy on us too." Thereupon the rain fell, and the thirst of the world was quenched. As a child of divorced parents, this story resonates deeply with me. The Midrash provides no details about what transpired between the couple previously, but I can certainly imagine the bitter feelings they might have harbored towards one another. And still, somehow, this man saw his ex-wife, someone whose flaws and failures he knew intimately, someone who may have caused him tremendous pain, like God looking down at the Israelites. His tenderness was stirred. Perhaps like me, you've seen or experienced how difficult it is for two people in this kind of situation to show even a hint of benevolence towards one another. And yet, this is exactly what the story charges us to do. Even if, like me, you don't believe in a God of reward and punishment, the Midrash contains a profound message for all of us. The nourishing rains only come when Rabbi Tanchuma tells God about the man's actions towards his former wife, as if to say, it is much easier to give charity to someone we don't know, someone who has never had a chance to hurt or disappoint us, to make us feel unloved or alone, someone we don't know enough about to create a counter-narrative about why they don't deserve our kindness. But cultivating compassion in our most fraught, painful, and contentious relationships, these are the actions that can bring about nourishing waters. These are the actions that begin to soften a hardened heart, something we need to do more than we might realize. How would God have felt if God destroyed the Israelites? How would the man from the Midrashic legend have felt if he saw his ex-wife suffering and he looked the other way? How do we feel when we unleash our anger on another person, stop reaching out, or do something to get someone back? Do we feel better? Maybe for a moment or two. But I think for most of us, the initial satisfaction we feel quickly gives way to exhaustion, heartache, and regret, trapping us in a cycle of negativity from which it can feel nearly impossible to escape. Only compassion can free us from the prison of our own anger, Rabbi Alan Liu teaches. Showing compassion to people who challenge us is something we do just as much for ourselves as for them, which brings me back to the class I took this summer. I agreed, along with my classmates, to take on Rabbi Jaffe's assignment and perform a caring act for someone with whom I was in conflict every day for a week. The actions we took were simple and small. Texting a photo to the person saying, "This made me think of you," picking up the person's favorite snack for them on the way home, getting out of the car at the airport to give the person a warm hello hug. A week later, when my classmates and I gathered again on Zoom, we reflected on how it felt to engage in this practice. Some of us noticed a strong initial resistance. We had cold hearts. But then many of us noticed that our cold hearts warmed up. We saw the person as someone who is bruised and broken, just like we are. Someone who fails and still needs to be seen and loved, just like we do. Despite my initial reluctance, I came to understand that the goal was not to forgive, but rather to begin to soften ourselves. The goal was not for our anger and frustration to disappear, but to diminish so that we might feel less weighed down by it. And to our surprise, some of us found that treating the other person with compassion caused them to soften and show more kindness towards us in return, bringing about feelings of mutual love and respect. So here we are, Yom Kippur, the Day of Atonement. Yom Kippur can be a painful day because certain relationships that felt most fraught last year might feel just as difficult this year. Maybe we've accepted that these relationships will never be easy, but we worry that we are Yom Kippur failures if we haven't yet been able to fully forgive someone we love. What if forgiveness doesn't have to be our goal? What if instead our goal is to be more kind, more compassionate, more loving? There is so much anger and hatred in the world right now, especially since October 7th. We feel it from every direction, and we have little control over the animus and vitriol we witness on a national and global level. But what we can control is whether or not compassion and love prevail in our own tiny corners of the world, our homes, our neighborhoods, our communities. So this year, when anger, pain, and resentment begin to overtake us, let's not allow it to trap us. When we feel ourselves falling right back into patterns of conflict and antagonism with someone in our life, let's pause, center ourselves, and ask ourselves if we have any compassion to offer instead. And when we feel like we are at our breaking point, that this person doesn't deserve any of our emotional energy, let alone our kindness or care, we can first have compassion for ourselves, and then we can quietly consider if the misery that comes with acting on our anger, the regret we will feel if we walk away, will hurt us deeply for a long time, maybe even forever. If the answer is yes, and I think for most of us it is, we can choose to challenge our automatic behavior and act in the direction of rachamim, compassion. We can do our part to bring about a cleansing and nourishing rain, a rain that we so desperately need in this new year. And we can strive to emulate our God of unconditional, unending love, to walk through the world with a softened heart and allow our tenderness to be stirred. We are loved